Hi guys, today you're going to learn how to write the planning commentary. This has been specifically created for elementary literacy and elementary math, but it would help just about any content area in understanding how to write it. For the exception of special ed, theirs is very different. As we get into talking about this today, I need to talk to you about something called the subject-specific emphasis. The subject-specific emphasis is something that a colleague and I gave it that name. It's really just a nickname, and we call it the SSE for short. And what it is the pedagogical emphasis of a particular content area. For example, in math, you're going to be talking about concepts and procedures. There are certain things that happen in a history classroom, for example, that make it a good history classroom. And this emphasis is the foundation of the assessment. It's really important, and you're going to find it all throughout the EdCPA, in the planning and in the instruction and in the assessment. We have to all understand what I'm talking about when I say ESSE, because I'm dealing in this PowerPoint with both literacy and math. And so since you have different SSE, I'll be referring to them differently. To find the SSE, you need to first look at your, I'm going to get out of the screen here real quick. You're going to first be looking at rubric 1, which you can find around page 10 or 13 of your handbook. Take a second to find rubric 1. Once you've found rubric 1, you can take a look at level 3 and level 4, and you'll see that there are some things that are highlighted here on the screen, and then they're bulleted on your rubric. For literacy, it says the candidates' plans for instruction build on each other to support learning of the essential literacy strategy for comprehending or composing text with clear connections to related skills. So basically what that means is that they want you to come up with a learning segment where in that period of time where you're working with the students on a particular central focus, you're going to have your instruction build on an essential literacy strategy that's either for comprehending text or composing text, and that you have clear connections with the skills that are related to that strategy. Math, yours is the same. Pretty much it's in the same place is where you're going to find it, but yours has to do with something different. Your learning segment needs to address conceptual understanding, procedural fluency, and mathematical reasoning or problem-solving skills. So these here are the SSE for literacy, and these are the SSE for math. So let's take a look at what the prompts ask. So one of the things that I have found is that students often really don't pay close enough attention to the prompts. So let's just go through the prompts real quickly and take a look. Now, your prompts are in the first part of your handbook that deals with task 1. Right before you get to rubric 1, there's a portion that's telling you what do I write? And if you'll find that, you'll see what I'm talking about. So, prompt 1 is asking you to describe your learning segment. And that's really all you're doing. You're talking about your central focus, and you're talking about your objectives, and all the stuff that you're going to be doing, how they build on each other, all of that. Prompt 2 is where you describe your students, and you describe your students' assets and their needs. Prompt 3 asks you to explain how you are planning to address those students' assets and needs throughout the learning segment. Prompt 4 asks you to describe the academic language of one key learning task within your learning segment. And then prompt 5 asks you to explain how your informal and formal assessments address the SSE throughout the learning segment. So the biggest area of mix-up is between prompts 2 and prompts 3. What happens is that teacher candidates get off topic in prompt 2, and they start, even though prompt 2 is asking about their students' assets and needs, that's really all they're asking. It's important that you understand. In prompt 2, you're just describing the students. You don't need to begin talking about what you're going to do to address those assets and needs. When students do jump the gun and do that, what happens is that they end up writing less about what they should write in prompt 2, because they're looking and say, oh, well, I've got, 3 or 4 solid paragraphs. And it could be that only 5 or 6 sentences in those paragraphs are going to offer the score or evidence that they need. So you need to make sure you're answering the question where it needs to be answered. The other thing is that since they've already written about how they're going to address the assets and needs, they have a tendency then to not say enough when prompt 3, and because they don't want to repeat themselves, and that's pretty understandable, but now they don't have what they need, and this is what causes the problem. Rule of thumb: if you believe you have already answered a question, if you're saying, wait a minute, I've already answered this question, that doesn't mean that the people who wrote the test made a mistake. It means you have, okay? So if you come across a situation you think, I've already answered this, that means that either you're misunderstanding the question that you've got in front of you, or you have misunderstood a question that you had previously. So just kind of keep that in mind, because there are differences, and scores go to specific prompts to find the answers, and you don't want the answers in the wrong places. So prompt 1a is pretty easy. It's just going to be describe the central focus and purpose of the content you will teach in the learning segment. So that's going to be for math, and then for literacy, it's describe the central focus and the essential literacy strategy for comprehending or composing text you will teach in the learning segment. So you are just going to describe the central focus and describe the purpose of the content if you're math. And for literacy, you're going to describe the central focus, and then you're going to describe the essential literacy strategy for comprehending or composing text. Here's an example. This is a literacy example. The central focus of this learning segment is to have students refer to details in a piece of text while they explain what the text says. The essential literacy strategy we will be using close reading activities and reading passages. We will be reading a text multiple times and then using that text to find evidence that the students can later use when writing an opinion piece. The learning tasks will be modeled in the learning first lesson using Oreo cookies to represent the text, and then they will use the modeled skill individually in the second and third lessons. So as you can see, these are she's got central focus bolded and essential literacy strategy bolded, because those things are important things from the prompt, right? Now in 1B, you are going to it says, giving the central focus, describe how the standards and learning objectives within your learning segment address your SSE. So this is where you start seeing an outline. In order to write this, I suggest going with 3 paragraphs. Paragraph 1, describe, you want to present your standards. So you can just really just list your standards, and then your own learning objectives, and then describe how your objectives support your standards. In paragraph 2, how do your objectives support and address your first SSE? Okay, so you're thinking about your SSE. So first of all, you've said, okay, here's my standards, here's my objectives. Now you've already made that relationship between your standards and objectives. Now it's your job to prove that your objectives support your SSE. So you talk about how the objectives support and address the SSE, and use examples from your lesson plans and from your activities. How do your objectives support your second SSE? How do your objectives support and address your third SSE? Well, it gets into a lot of writing, as you can see. Here's someone who's written, and she wrote about her standards. The standards I will be using are, and she writes them out. She talks about how it addresses the essential literacy strategy. She talks about in lesson 1 and the lesson 2. She does a really good job being thorough. So that's how you do part 1A and 1B. And this would be a good time for you to stop and to go ahead and write 1A and 1B. And then we will pick up next time with the remaining of prompt 1. Thanks.